Welcome to the Waking Up Podcast. This is Ham Sarris. Before I bring you today's episode, I'd like to formally announce that I'm going to commit suicide, and here's your last chance to talk me out of it. I had a friend, not a close friend, but someone who I had met. This was a person who would email me periodically. I went back and forth with him a little bit over email, mostly. It really strikes to the very core of the question, is life worth living? And that is a resounding no, at least for those who don't yet exist. And no doubt most of what is interesting in moral philosophy can be brought to bear on this question. We're sliding down the ramp of a hedonic experience. We start at the very, very positive, and life gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until it gets truly neutral. And maybe there's other forms of neutral beyond nuclear war. For at least one form of neutral is not having any godlike paradise. And then we just keep on sliding and things get a little bit bad and a little bit worse, and all of a sudden we're in hell. This view is really not so much the product of a valid chain of reasoning, it's the product of a likely mood disorder. I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast, but this is the formal announcement. And I will post more information on my website as it becomes available. Look for an email by the end of the day, December 6th. And if you don't receive an email, check your spam folder first, but if it's not there, feel free to email us at massdeath@hamsarris.org. Okay, and now for today's guest. Today I'm speaking with David Benatar. Ben is a person who could have existed but doesn't. And undoubtedly there are philosophical problems with thinking about him. I mean, are there these possible things, or are there simply actual things? And we're actually just misled by our notion of possibility. But leaving that aside, he's giving birth, in Haiti during the earthquake. There's more pleasure flooding in there, and more, an even deeper sense of meaning, even deeper gratification of one's intellectual life. He's the author of a few books: Better Never to Have Been, The Harm of Coming into Existence. And now I bring you David Benatar. I'm here with David Benatar. Ben, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Why would it be a bad thing for everyone to die tonight? Everyone goes to sleep. There's just the lights going out in 7 billion brains all at once. What could be wrong with that?
Well, let me ask you this. So let's imagine that you knew that your children and your grandchildren, let's say, and your great-grandchildren will all have blissful lives. Would you breed the next generation? I mean, I know you've done it already, but if you could go back in order to yield some massive benefit for some future people with whom you've got no direct contact, would you do it? Because I think there's something indecent about that.
Well, it is a difficult question that I feel like I could never impose on somebody else against their will.
That's exactly my view. What would you say about the slave case?
First, I could certainly imagine a happy slave. These are beings who are far more competent than you and I are to judge the character of their experience. They've had 1 billion years to consider the matter, and they're still happy to be here.
Well, obviously, you and I are looking back at those cave dwellers very differently, because I'm sorry they reproduced.
That's not a non sequitur, or that's not an oxymoron.
Well, let's put it this way. I know what you mean by a happy slave, but let's imagine you've got somebody who's enslaved. They're subjected to a certain amount of brutality. There's piles of unpleasantness in their life. But when you ask them, are you glad that you came into existence? And they answer yes. Would you now use that datum as part of a justification for breeding further slaves who would live in those sorts of circumstances?
Slavery is only slavery.
Right, but I'm presenting that case to you because you need to think about a scenario where you can think about the alternatives and think about them quite vividly.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that slavery worked for me because I have a child, and there was something very, very good that could have happened to her. I could have secured some slave for her that she doesn't know about, but I declined to do that, right? So she has the life she has, this beautiful woman who you think you're married to, but I could have given her the super enhanced life with slavery,
You're talking about an existing child
an
here.
existing child. But I declined to do that. So now she has her life as it was and was going to be, but it could have been otherwise. And I, for quite capricious reasons of my own, because I didn't want to spend 10 seconds to sign a form or click a button on a website, she does not have this slave. And she doesn't know about it, right? So has she been wronged in any way? And I think most people's intuitions would be yes. And yet on your account, I'm wondering if I could say that.
You are speaking about an existing child, and so I would say that this child is worse off without this benefit having been bestowed. But I don't think that a parallel claim can be made about a child that you don't bring into existence.
But I have decided not to have a third child, you'll be happy to know.
Do you think that would be a good thing?
Yes.
And do you think you've got a reason to avoid bringing that child into existence?
It really is a monstrous crime to have children. At a minimum, it's a colossal act of negligence on the part of people who haven't really thought about these issues clearly enough. Ushering souls into hell.
I worry I've distracted you. All I want to do is to
Yeah.
flag what I took to be a somewhat controversial assumption. And I worry we've gone down a line we perhaps shouldn't go down.
I think it is interesting.
It is interesting, that it is.
Bringing people into existence does in fact apply to the continuing existence of existing people.
See, again, I think that's exactly the wrong attitude to have. And you're wrong about that.
I will just cancel that by saying, no, I'm not making a mistake here in reasoning.
But these other population problems that Derek Buffett comes from really arise from the cancer that's going to ravage their future adult child's body decades in the future, and often decades after the parent has died.
It's been, these are the kinds of conversations that make life just barely worth living. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.